The CBDC, central bank digital currency, is a new form of replacement digital dollars, e-dollars, or even now being referred to in some instances as Biden dollars. Crazy to think. But also stating that these Biden dollars are old, decrepit, don't know which way is up from down, and will not actually work when you need them to. Now, I can't say with any certainty here if that is actually true, but I can tell you that there is some important information that has been shared, particularly about the future of central bank digital currency, CBDC, and the possible implications that it can and will have on you and I, folks, U.S. citizens, taxpayers, and actually all those around the world, as central banks in multiple countries are working to implement this government controlled blockchain technology of the ability to track, trace, and most importantly, tax those people in any and every possible way, 6 ways from Sunday, with every transaction that they know that currently they lack the ability to with physical cash, and more importantly, cryptocurrency, decentralized currency, Ripple, Ethereum, Bitcoin, XRP, ETH, BTC, Doge, USDC, altcoins. The list goes on and on, folks. Now, I got some important information I want to share with you guys. I'm going to ask that you stick with me until the end of the video. Feel free to rewind, replay, take notes, comment down below, ask questions. I want to make sure that we have as much information as possible, as soon as possible, and as we rapidly approach the deadlines, as a new date has been announced, July 2023. That is literally just a few weeks away, folks. I've got a video up on the channel. Go check it out. July 2023, the Fed has made an announcement, and they are pushing forward with implementation and rollout. Remember, they're looking to track, and tax, most importantly. But they want to track, they want to trace, they want to tax. They want more money, they want more control, and they want to ultimately possibly see the elimination of private banks. We've got Silicon Valley Bank, we've got Signature Bank, New York, we've got Silvergate, we've got any other bank that starts with the letter S. Just joking, folks. I don't know if the next bank to collapse is going to start with the letter S. It's just ironic and coincidental. But at the end of the day, what would the Fed, what would the Biden administration, what would these central banks and their blatant misuse of U.S. taxpayer dollars much rather have more control over than anything else? The money and the banks. That way that they can actually put forth their restrictions and their controls on us all without having to hope and rely on the adjustment of interest rates and banks and businesses reacting. Nope. They could do it themselves with a push of a button, manipulation of the algorithm in this blockchain technology with a CBDC, central bank digital currency. And if you don't believe me, just take a glance on my channel for a previous video titled Currency Confiscation and the actual events that have occurred in Nigeria, Africa, and their switch over to the e-naira, e-dollar, and introduction into CBDC, dipping their toe into the CBDC waters, and just how well that worked out for them. Now, folks, let's take a look here. Cointelegraph reports that CBDCs threaten our future. So it's time to take a stand. And central bank digital currencies will give governments around the globe unprecedented power to surveil and control your financial activity. Track, trace, tax. Folks, this is not necessarily a good thing in my opinion. However, I will say that if anyone has any possible consideration for how this could potentially be a plus for us all, please feel free, comment down below. I would love to get your take on this and how this could potentially be a good thing. But it says that if the development of blockchain technology was a financial revolution, central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, are the counter revolution. Their development has intensified in 2023 across the globe, and it's now more important than ever for the world to know what could lay behind the acronym. While there are some who think central banks can be trusted to proceed, the facts stand against them. This technology would give central banks unprecedented control, could pose serious security risks, and is also entirely unnecessary. If you understand blockchain, you also understand the privacy dangers that are inherent in government issued digital currencies. Every detail of every transaction would be available to state regulators such as tax authorities. And in the United Kingdom's case, the tax agency would not require any additional legal powers to examine all the details of every CBDC transaction or CBDC transaction. So, folks, think about this. If we were to see CBDC rolled out, not only can they track, trace, and tax, but they could also restrict and prevent people from potentially, let's just say, food for thought here. We want to cut down on sales of any particular controlled substance that could potentially cause harm to people, i.e., beverages at a bar. So the CBDC will say, you know what? We're only going to allow you to use CBDC to purchase alcoholic beverages between the hours of between the hours of, let's just say, 5 p.m. and 10 p.m. And within that time frame, you're only allowed to purchase two per hour. Theoretically, they could do that. They could also track and see how much you consume, where you consume, as well as a variety of other activities that you would engage in on a regular basis that would then help them formulate and calculate your new credit score. Now, this credit score is not based upon your repayment history or open lines of credit and your credit utilization percentages. This would be based on your social credit. And they could do that by tracking your transactions, what you do, where you go, how often you do it, and or possibly even restricting and eliminating the idea that this could happen because they don't want it to. Think about C-19 pandemic. The world rushes in a mad dash to prepare for who knows what, grabbing up every possible roll of toilet paper they could find. CBDC could place limitations and restrictions on these purchases. Now, granted, that doesn't mean that people wouldn't have access to them, because that could potentially lead to a chaotic crisis-like situation of rioting and panic and anxiety and stress and fear, where people say, you know what, I'm just not going to pay for it. I'll just take it. Folks, anything is possible. We need to be aware and prepared for what is likely to occur if we were to allow the central bank, the government, to have so much control over us, our money, our daily spending and activities, as well as our ability to invest. As CBDCs could potentially be limited on the types of investments you could make, and or even expiration dates set on how long you could save the money, ultimately forcing consumer activity in the economy to adjust inflation, to adjust sales, to tackle a recession and prevent it from happening. Now, it says here that some might say that these powers wouldn't be used. However, these investigatory powers don't just exist. They are used and abused. Now, if anybody here has ever watched any possible movie like Minority Report or Minority Report and Eagle Eye and Enemy of the State and probably any Bond movie or GoldenEye, or I'm sorry, 007 or Mission Impossible. Look, folks, this is real. Granted, on some accounts and some levels, it is slightly exaggerated for theater. However, this is real. And they are used and abused. Take the Regulation of Investigatory Powers Act, introduced in the UK to deal with the threats from terrorism. Before long, local councils were using the new powers to spy on people walking dogs, feeding pigeons, and dumping waste. There are cameras everywhere, folks, and they are compiling this data and information pinpointing your location, triangulating you not only with those, but also the cameras that you carry around in your pockets on a regular basis, these smartphones, and they're compiling this information into databases and algorithms, not only for OpenAI, ChatGPT, but to further develop out these social credit scores, these ESGs. There have been major tech companies building data centers. Data centers. I'm talking about acres upon acres of servers and terabytes upon terabytes of storage to retain and collect this data and then use it to analyze. And if you haven't seen my video on OpenAI, ChatGPT, and GPT-4, it may just blow your mind of their capabilities. Now, it's also a big assumption that state regulators will be able to keep CBDC information confidential, especially given the fact that we have so many leaks and data breaches and cybersecurity attacks. Meanwhile, in the UK, state agencies too often lose data, accounting for 54% of all data breach fines. Not that long ago, HM Revenue and Customs managed to lose the records of 25 million taxpayers. And that's no joke. But the threat from hackers is also significant, and the centrally collected data will be a massive honeypot for hackers in the hostile states that back them, which means, honestly, folks, in my opinion, without a shadow of a doubt, that means that we are going to be in a situation where we are going to be forced to spend money to further protect our data, our information, our currency, our CBDC from this new vulnerable blockchain hack that could potentially wipe out all of the money in one central bank, not having the ability to have my number one pillar principle of diversity amongst many banks. You'll be stuck with one, as the central bank would wipe out private banks and institutions altogether, if not already on that path, with Kevin O'Leary stating himself, Mr. Wonderful, saying that what the Biden administration just did with the bailout with Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank New York and whatever bank to come moving forward in the next few days or weeks or months to face collapse, bailing them out, literally wipes out private banking institutions and any investor interested in investing in these institutions, knowing what would likely happen when a collapse were to occur, with the government having their hand in it and having their own reasoning behind the push in the direction that they prefer to go, which would ultimately be the elimination of smaller banks, moving on to the elimination of private banks, and the central bank taking over. Now, as the director of Britain's cyber intelligence agency, the government communications headquarters commented a CBDC gives a hostile state the ability to surveil transactions. It gives them the ability to be able to exercise control over what is conducted on those digital currencies. Acquiring CBDC data would be the equivalent of hitting the jackpot for hostile states. We may also assume that hacking won't be their only approach. For example, a recent congressional inquiry revealed that Chinese agents were trying to infiltrate the United States Federal Reserve. And we can see this post here from Twitter from Representative Tom Emmer, GOP Majority Whip, an unelected bureaucrat stating a willingness to trade your right to financial privacy for a surveillance-style U.S. CBDC. Remarks by Undersecretary for Domestic Finance. Folks, I am glad that we actually have somebody in Washington with the cojones to stand up and put their foot down for the protection and safety of you, me, all of the American people, and our constitutional rights to privacy and security. Now, a CBDC could also be programmed to achieve various government objectives. Some central bankers want to use CBDCs to conduct monetary policy, imposing negative interest rates by taking funds out of CBDC accounts. And this is what I was telling you guys about, the expiration dates and the fees that would be charged for saving money for too long a period of time. They could impose this with negative interest rates, which would literally be the equivalent of quantitative tightening. However, instead of manipulating interest rates and trying to force a recession, a market crash, an economic crash, crisis, they would just do it by the use of negative interest rates on accounts. Now, taxes could be levied at the point of transaction, and purchases of certain items could be prevented or restricted to support rationing. And again, this is like I was telling you guys about with the runs on toilet paper. The possibilities for increased government control are endless, let alone we would see the idea of, your kid wanting to start and set up a lemonade stand not even going to be a possibility because they'll say, well, why can't I start a lemonade stand? Well, that's because there's no cash and there's no way that people can pay you for it without the government taxing you for it. So if you want to sell lemonade, you have to sell it for $19.95 because they're going to take tax. A key question asked by the House of Lords Economic Affairs Committee in a fascinating report on CBDCs is, what problem are they actually trying to solve? Former Bank of England Governor Mervyn King pointed out in the House of Lords earlier this month, CBDCs are CBDCs are about ways of making payments. They are not a new currency. What are the problems in our payment system to which a CBDC might be answered? Is what he concluded. And there are no problems to which a CBDC is the only or even the most obvious answer. Our payment system is more efficient than those in most other countries. End quote. Now, Lord King exposed the hollowness of the whole drive to CBDCs. They are little more than a power grab by central banks, with risks hugely outweighing the benefits insofar as these exist at all. Like if you agree. Proponents of CBDCs argue that they would improve payment system efficiency, promote financial inclusion, and cross-border transactions easier and cheaper. And what they won't tell you is that all of these features are already offered to consumers today in the form of a fiat-backed stablecoin issued by private companies. Examples such as Circle's Eurocoin, EUROC or EUROC, and Pound Tokens GBPT provide many of the exact same use cases as both wholesale and retail CBDCs for both the Eurozone and the United Kingdom. Now, make no mistake, central banks know this. Private stablecoins have already hit the mainstream in parts of the world, such as Latin America, where local currency devaluation has led to more than a third of people making purchases with stablecoins. International Monetary Fund economist Eswar Prasad even predicted last year that in regions facing similar issues, national currencies issued by the central banks could be displaced by stablecoins, which is why, in my opinion, we're seeing such a hard push against cryptocurrency by legislation. Now, it should be no surprise that the recent CBDC development push around the world has coincided with unprecedented stablecoin scrutiny and legal action from government regulators. Like, are they intentionally making situations and instances like FTX happen? I don't know. What do you guys think? Now, what can we do? Above all, we need to spread a greater understanding of the issues, both in the policy community and the general public. And let's bring the facts out into the open. The best way to do this is through an international awareness campaign that occurs before CBDCs are entrenched. This matter is too important to be decided only by those with vested interests, such as central banks, which is why Tom Emmer and what he is proposing to block Congress with this CBDC and this invasion of privacy is so important, as well as just something as simple as, hey, what do you do if there's an EMP strike?